No, yeah, so just being vacant. Has to be like an overt act or what. So Mike
Nope, this is the only meeting. This is the only subject.
Say you live in an apartment.
I'm ready.
It's working? We have the agenda.
Now this is it. And I don't have last month's minutes till, yeah.
No, we're just doing it.
Yeah, we're just doing tonight.
Comments is going to be about how this relates to master plan consistency. Comments are going to shut it down.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Sunshine Laws of the State of New Jersey, Chapter 145, by Mayor and Council, and the Planning Board for official notices. Notice of this meeting was posted on the Borough Bulletin Board and the borough's website for that purpose. Can I have a roll call, Suzanne, for attendance?
Sure. Ms. Bonacorsi?
Here.
Mr. Madden?
Here.
Mr. Dukakis?
Here.
Chairman Hanson?
Here.
Mayor Houck?
Here.
Councilman Morgan?
Here.
Mr. Shannon?
Here.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
We have a full flag salute, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we don't have any administrative business this evening, so we'll move right along. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that's the continuation of our discussion at the regular October planning board meeting about master plan consistency review for the station and development. And I guess we'll turn it over to Leah or Emily at this point, or
Sure.
what do you think would be appropriate?
Thank you all for coming out tonight for the special meeting so that we can advance this back to council. I just want to check with your solicitor, Ms. Hyatt. Leah is still sworn from the last meeting, or would you like to swear her in again?
Let's swear her in again. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. Thanks, yeah. There were some questions from the board during the last meeting that we had. Leah was able to do some research on that, and she sent an email back to the board, but if she could just explain for the public as well what she found.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Leah Fury-Bruder, the planner that was working on preparing this redevelopment plan for these lots along Station Avenue and the White Horse Pike. Just to confirm, this redevelopment plan applies only to lots 7, 16, 17, 17.01, and 18 in Block 25, and that's at the northwest corner of Station Avenue and the White Horse Pike. Most of the questions or the discussions, where it ended at least, related to setbacks from Station Avenue and the White Horse Pike. So following the meeting, I was able to look at the survey and get some information also from Google Earth. So the current building at 501 Station Avenue is on White Horse Pike is 27 feet from the property line. The property line is 14 feet back from the curb. So total, the current building is set back 41 feet from the curb. along White Horse Pike. The current zoning would allow a building to be set back 10 feet from the property line, which would be a total of 24 feet from the curb. And the proposed redevelopment plan proposed 5 feet, a minimum of 5 feet from the property line, which would be a total of 19 feet from the curb. And then along Station Avenue, the current buildings are set back 0 feet from the property line. The property line is 12.5 feet from the curb. And the proposal is for the same, that buildings could be set back 0 feet from the property line, but the redevelopment plan does require that a portion of that building frontage be set back a minimum of at least 5 additional feet, so that basically if you're proposing a 3-story building, the first floor would be set back further, so that there would be a colonnade or a covered patio area. So that'll open up the street frontage a bit more, though the second and third floor could be at the 0-foot setback. And that applies to both the White Horse Pike and Station Avenue. So in my email to the board, I think I mentioned it with reference to Station Avenue, but it actually applies to the White Horse Pike as well.
I know that we continued the meeting or the hearing on this last time because we received the redevelopment plan to sort of lay a shower to give everybody a chance to fully vet it and review it before we do a master plan consistency review. I'll open it up. I guess it'd be appropriate to open it to the board at this point for any further questions or reiterations from that meeting if necessary. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Leah or Emily for that matter?
Is it from the public? Are you?
No, not yet.
No.
It's a board right now.
Can I just make a comment? One of this, in design standards, in A2, it calls for bike racks of a U-shaped design. I know the mayor and council has provided a bike racks in the last year that are much nicer than a U-shaped design. Would it be possible to put some sort of condition or the U-shape or at the discretion of council?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I wasn't aware that there was that the borough had a standard design that has been used. So in that case, yeah, maybe recommend that we could swap it out. Like, for example, with regards to lighting, I referenced, to get the standard that's already in place. That would make sense to do the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to reiterate, I think it looks nice. I just have the one concern I had at the last hearing still, that I think it shouldn't be set any closer to White Horse Pike than the other buildings on that corner. And that's the one thing that I would like to send it back to council with, to see if they could re-examine that. I mean, overall, I think it's pretty clear if you look at the goals of the master plan that it does substantially, it's in substantial conformance with the master plan. There's just a couple little things that could be re-examined, I think, when it goes back to council before this is finalized. Does anybody else have any comments?
I do. I mean, Leah, can you talk about that for a minute in terms of, the goal of the master plan and the purpose, obviously, of the redevelopment is to have significant positive impact on the character and vibrancy of the downtown, correct?
Right.
And, we're talking about these setbacks that you just mentioned and how they'll change a little bit with the proposed plan. That corner basically, and the corner adjacent to it, actually all 4 corners, really the gateway of Haddon Heights, right? And we don't really have anything there that the plan is to somehow generate traffic to turn left or right into our downtown area and bring more people to town. Do the setbacks and the purpose of the plan, with these setbacks, does that create almost where if there is a new building there, it almost kind of captures more people's attention to that this is the gateway of our town? Can it benefit us that way with the smaller setback?
In my opinion, yes, because while we did discuss at the last meeting that there is a rather consistent setback of around 32 to 35 feet from curb to buildings along the White Horse Pike, mostly, the former houses that were converted into offices and things like that. But at this particular intersection, that isn't the character that you want at this particular intersection. You know, you're not looking at that same character, you're transitioning into the downtown character. So, and it's been determined already that that you want to have a mixed use, eyes on the street kind of a vibe in the downtown. And in order to accomplish that, you know, you need to have different building types. And the corner, and so having some special architecture and different building type there, I think helps with defining that entry and
So-
position.
Thank you. And following up on that, so if we did do the setbacks or the setbacks that are called for in the current plan, and then all of a sudden you're pushing that building back, the hypothetical building back, let's say the redevelopment, and maybe there's parking there. So then all of a sudden we have a parking lot as our gateway instead of an actual building, correct? Is that what would happen?
Right, because right now you do have less, the 501 Station Avenue building does have some pavement between the building and the White Horse Pike.
Correct.
The one on the other side of Station Avenue actually has a row of angled parking between White Horse Pike and the building. And that's less desirable in a downtown setting than having a building on the street. You know, you have more of a streetscape, it's more pedestrian friendly, it's obviously more attractive than a parking lot. So this plan doesn't, it's intentional. It does not call for parking along the street frontages.
Right, and actually the new setbacks, the new proposed setbacks with the new building would actually capture drivers' attention more than a parking lot or more than what's there now in terms of just with respect to the redevelopment. Is that why it would be distinguishable? It would also be distinguishable whether you're coming from the 295 area, obviously coming up to see a new building, but even if you were coming from the Audubon direction, the setback, you have this building closer to the road theoretically, which would help capture, oh, I'm entering the downtown area of Paddock Heights, correct?
Right, it's a visual cue that something different is happening here.
Okay.
With regard to the setback issue, we're talking, the discussion has been purely an aesthetic feature, correct? So there's the setbacks that are proposed in the plan. There is no safety concerns with lines of sight or anything like that, are there?
I don't believe so. And, you know, there are conceptual drawings that have been done, well, they haven't been fully engineered. Certainly, you know, when they do fully engineer a plan, it has to comply with any safety requirements and site distance requirements.
DOT would certainly be interested in that.
Right, and I guess that's what my question is, this plan doesn't invite any type of violation of what those regulations might be.
No.
Right.
I mean, Emily, I don't know if that's a legal question too, like in terms of the redevelopment plan would conform with whatever, I mean, obviously, once the developer comes, whoever proposes, whatever type of development they may or may not do, they would have to comply with all sight lines and sight triangles and everything else.
They absolutely would, and that review would come from Mr. Bach's office
Right.
once a site plan is submitted.
Right.
And then they certainly would have to comply with any and all DOT regulations. The board, the governing body cannot supersede DOT regulations.
And either can the board here, we can't by acknowledging this or approving this, we're not somehow usurping site plans or site triangles or anything along those lines.
No, as a matter of fact, any application that comes in pursuant to this redevelopment plan or any other redevelopment plan is fully vetted by the board, the same way any other site plan application would be vetted by the board.
Question. I guess this would be for Leah. Let's assume that the proposed setbacks in the plan are allowed. So where the building would be walked forward of, I believe it's Cassay's property, which is adjacent to it now, which the plan also encompasses. Should there be consideration to any building that would be put on that corner for its, let's call it I guess it would be a side yard or a rear of 501, 503, because of the fact that it's got a visual, it's going to capture, it's going to be a traveler from Audubon traveling down the pike is going to capture the rear of the property as a first glimpse, as they do now, which is not a desirable look.
Right.
Is there some thought there that we should be incorporating something into this plan to, and again, you being the expert on the plan, how do you incorporate that in there for any property that?
It is in the plan, and let me just find the section. The plan requires that all sides of the building that are visible to the public, which in this case is all the sides of the building.
Just about.
Yeah, that they all be designed with the same materials and basically the same treatment as the primary facade.
Okay.
So that.
So you couldn't have, a developer wouldn't be able to put brick and let's say, some type of wood features on Station Ave, Whitehurst Pike, and then in the back parking area, use vinyl siding.
Right, or you're not gonna have like a cinder block wall or something.
Or cinder
like that.
block, right. Okay. Yeah, it's to the board, I mean, it's my opinion that, again, I think as Mr. Madden articulated so well, is that like right now, as a traveler, either going east or westbound on the Whitehorse Pike, there is nothing, if you don't catch the red light, there is nothing to tell you that this is a downtown. There's nothing that separates Station Ave from High Street, Green Street, or Garden Street. It's just, you could continue through. It's my personal opinion that by eliminating the current parking space that you have on the property now that sits on the Whitehorse Pike and allowing for that bump out, that it creates some type of visual catch, assuming that side, I would call it the rear of the Station Ave side, has the same visual architectural features. It would be desirable. You would see it. It would catch your eye. It would make you think. It would make you pause. And I think that there. If we could emulate it across the street on Station Ave at Carmen's, and incentivize that almost to remove the parking. I think that's a win. I think it's going to start to capture that downtown feeling.
Anyone else on the board have anything? Okay. Guess we'll open it up to the public at this point, but I just wanted to say, before we open it up to the public, I know we have some interest in this, and this is a sensitive issue to some. Try not to be repetitive with your comments, and we're here this evening as a planning board to determine whether this redevelopment plan is substantially consistent with the master plan. So we need to keep our comments related to that task and not get off track with matters that are going to be decided by Borough Council. We're simply here determining whether this is substantially consistent with the master plan. So with that, I'll open it up to the public.
Excuse me, may I just request that you use your microphones, please? Thank you.
Did everyone hear what I?
Now,
Did everyone- We're good? Come on up, Bob, if you want to speak.
That's much better, by the way.
Okay.
Keep close to the mic. Bob Hunter, 213 Second Avenue.
I don't think it's not an official public hearing, so I don't think this is.
I'm here for a variety of reasons, so I hope you indulge me. But my main question, and is to the chair, to your solicitor, or to Ms. Bruder?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, good. I thought maybe that's what it was. So I'm trying to get a better handle, as I have been for a while, on the whole redevelopment process. And I'm getting there. And thanks to a lot of you. So, and I'm not speaking specifically to this case, but any case. So the developer comes in, it's in the redevelopment zone, Black Horse Pike, wherever it is. They go to construction, they put in an application. It then goes to redevelopment committee, or if in case it's in the historic district, then it goes to historic district. So there's a public review at historic district. Then that, either historic district or nothing, then goes to the redevelopment committee, which is the mayor and one council person. At that point, they sit with the redeveloper and determine what he wants and whether that meets mayor, council, or the redevelopment committee, I'll keep it that way, goals. And then it goes, I guess, to planning for a public meeting, whether it's conforming, as you said. After that, it goes back to mayor and council, and then mayor, council, and their solicitor writes an ordinance, very specific, essentially copying this, if everything goes the way whoever you're advising, if you're the person advising. And then there's a public meeting for 2 meetings, I guess, for an ordinance to pass, and then it's done. Is that essentially it, or am I not following right?
So,
I'm only might be, that's one of the.
Yeah.
so the process is a little bit different than you described.
Good.
So it can occur 2 ways. In this instance, the borough made a determination to declare certain areas in need of rehabilitation or redevelopment.
Right.
Once that determination was done, it spurred some interest from some property owner developer. They came to the borough council with a proposal for development.
And they do that in how? They go to construction with the
No.
concept?
No, they don't go to the construction office. They
Okay.
contact either the mayor or someone else on council directly.
Okay.
And they engage in a conversation. And if it is a proposal that fits within what the borough is hoping to achieve in terms of someone who is qualified to do a development, owns the property, because this is all non-condemnation and, you have to
Yes.
own it, excuse me. And the negotiation begins. And so proposals are made, they go back and forth between redevelopment committee. I can't speak for, I can't speak for the mayor on how the governing body is consulted through the process. But once a proposal is to a point where the borough feels comfortable that it can move forward in some fashion, we would enter into a memorandum of understanding with that developer. Name them a conditional redeveloper for the property, have them post an escrow so that the borough can then complete its due diligence. And that escrow pays for that due diligence. It pays for Ms. Bruder's time, it pays for my time, and any other engineering review that has to be done. And it gets developed. We find out through meetings and consultation the constraints of the site. This particular site has a lot of constraints with regard to stormwater. They are being addressed.
They're being
Addressed.
addressed.
And that is one of the paramount reasons why this area was deemed in need of redevelopment versus rehabilitation. A lot has to go into this project monetarily in order to alleviate those conditions. And it's going to not only alleviate conditions for this site, but further down Station Avenue. So all of that comes into play when you're talking about development of a plan and development of a project and approving a particular concept. So once that concept is in more of a concrete form through those negotiations, we talk to Ms. Bruder and she helps to develop the redevelopment plan. It is in consultation with the developer because there are certain needs for the project, financial needs, again, site constraints, all with an eye towards ensuring that historic is consulted. This particular project went to historic for the demolition permit. Once a plan is adopted for this project, that developer will have to submit its site plan application. That will need to go, if historic needs to see it,
And at that point, that's this plan.
that's this plan.
Okay, good.
Right, so that would
So
be.
with that bar, good.
We did the MOU, we've done the negotiations, drafted the plan. The plan got introduced, like any other ordinance would, at council,
So this plan has been introduced
This has been
as an ordinance,
as an
and that's why
ordinance,
it's
correct.
as in the
And,
ordinance.
and the next step is this step, the referral to the planning
Right.
board for the master plan consistency review. And once that's completed, then the governing body will hold a public hearing on adoption of the ordinance.
And is that, so the introduction of this,
Mhm.
is that their first public hearing of the ordinance? And so the next time it would, so like,
So an
it's
introduction,
approved
yes.
tonight, so then it goes to mayor and council
Mhm.
for one more public hearing.
On this plan, yes, on the
On-
ordinance.
Yeah,
Yes,
or,
correct.
or whatever plan happens to
Correct.
be, yes,
Mhm,
okay.
That's correct.
And so, good. I think you basically answered it.
Okay.
Yeah,
If you have any other questions, you can always contact me.
So, Bob, just, can I add something after that?
sure.
If it was approved by council, then it would still have to go through site plan review here, but we would review it versus the approved redevelopment plan versus the underlying zoning like we would. We'd review it just like any other application, but it's just a different criteria.
Yeah.
So site plan issues would be addressed at
But
that meeting.
But at that point, it's really very fine details that you're approving.
Correct.
And at other times, I'm thinking of particularly an apartment building that is being proposed for Atlantic Avenue. There were variances needed and that sort of thing. Those no longer sit with you in this kind of situation because the variances have been wiped away by creating an ordinance.
So,
And that's,
I
I'm
articulate,
not
You're correct.
objecting, I'm
I
just
understand,
asking.
yeah, you're asking.
So you're asking a good question.
and then, so I didn't realize, I just want to articulate that, they're not, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not like to, the existing.
Yeah,
No, I'm trying not to get it to be echoey. The existing, zoning requirements are not wiped away. This plan is laid on top of it. And the only way for a developer to, am I correct so far?
You are, but I think Bob is asking, if for this plan, if someone comes in and utilizes this plan
They have to be in.
based off of the concepts that we've reviewed, if it matches, like, we've created a plan, so it's variance free.
Correct.
Right,
Really
that's
what
right.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes, but that person has to be,
A redeveloper has to have
A
a
redeveloper,
redevelopment agreement.
Yeah, and
and
you
you're
still
still with
have to
us
get to
and
this
agreeing.
point.
So like, if the existing person who owns 501, 503 decided to sell the property, it's not that anybody can just buy it and then say, well, we've got this plan in place and I can take advantage of it without government counsel. No, they have to enter into an agreement with us. They have to. And then there is things like what you were asking in regards to historic and things like that can be written into, there is one last phase after the plan's adopted. A developer needs to, we pass a redevelopment agreement with them, like a contract, which would encompass whether anything that was a pilot or anything that we may request of them. I.e., I think in the last discussion, was parking could come up and be more deeply evaluated. If there was building features, historic features that we wanted to incorporate, that could be included in a redevelopment agreement, which is just a resolution, a contract. No different than signing like passing a police contract, right? So it's a contract that we're signing with the developer. But those, anybody, if that developer will walk away, they don't just have free reign to come in and use this plan without being in an agreement with it.
And that's really for exterior finishes and details that we're talking about when it has to go back to the historic district to see how it's going to appear. The fact that it's a 3-story building and it sits where it sits and all the rest, that's no longer part of the historic district's concern.
Correct.
Okay, and all fine with that, you know, yeah.
I know, you're just asking to
I
understand.
really am, I
Okay.
really am. And so if it's not in the historic district, let's say it's on the Black Horse Pike, the first time the public hears about anything is when mayor and council introduces a plan like this, specific to whatever that would be on the Black Horse Pike.
Yes.
And of course, that's not in the historic district, that's why I'm using it as an example.
Yeah, that would likely be the first official public action, yes.
Right.
I doubt it's gonna be the first time anybody hears about it, but yes.
Well, here's another bit, but can comment on it, that would be the first time a public could comment on it.
Yes,
in a public
likely,
meeting.
yeah, and certain larger projects, There are sometimes public forums to kind of get input and feedback, so that a plan can get developed that's going to accommodate different interests. You know, it all depends on the particular project. So I can't say that that will happen for the Black Horse Pike area. It depends on, you know, what the interests of, you know, the market is really,
Right.
and who owns those properties.
Excuse me for just a quick second. Yeah, so I think you've answered my questions in terms of the process. This particular process, after tonight, is going to mayor and council, an ordinance will be passed, and it'll come back to you and historic district for the fine tuning, so to speak, as it always did.
Correct.
Okay. And then after that, they can go ahead. Good. A specific question about this, if I may, and you stated this earlier, and I wasn't. So the math on the difference between the current side yard setback to the pike and the proposed side yard setback, and I would be more interested in the actual building and the piers or pillars, rather than the interior wall of the first floor. What is the difference?
Currently, it's about 40 feet setback from the curb.
Right.
And the minimum for the redevelopment, under the redevelopment plan standards would be 19.
19, okay, so you're losing about 20 feet curb, okay. And again, specific to this, your parking doesn't, this plan calls for additional parking someplace else, or I'm not saying.
Offsite,
right,
yeah.
Offsite.
Yeah.
And they have to have an agreement that will last 3 years.
Correct.
If after, what happens, it's an obvious question, what happens after 3 years if then whoever they're cross-parking with says, oh, well, I'm doing redevelopment and I'm taking more of my property and I can't, or I need that parking place. What happens? Obviously, you can't tell them to take out the building.
Right. They'll need to find another place to have their parking. At that point, they'll be operational. They'll have tenants that have an expectation for a parking spot.
Sure.
So they'll need to figure it out before one expires. They'll need to identify the next. Yeah. We thought about making it longer. I think I initially drafted it in perpetuity, but I was reminded that's really not possible because you can't stop people from doing things with their property, so.
And I think you basically answered all my questions. I will point out that PNC Bank has a wide setback. Even the Freeze building where the stone shop is, that has a deeper setback than, so does the candy shop, ice cream place. Even John's has more of a setback. It's not right up to the sidewalk, for what that's worth. So, good, thank you very much, it's been very helpful.
Thanks for coming out. Those were a lot of really good questions. I hope it helped everybody else in the public understand the process a little better too, who might have questions. Anybody else like to come forward and speak?
Good evening, my name is Margaret Westfield. I'm a historic architect. I live at 425 White Horse Pike. And I'd like to share with you my opinion, which is that under no circumstances should 126 White Horse Pike be included in this plan. 126 White Horse Pike is a fully restored centennial building that is occupied by lawyers' offices. And if it were to be demolished, that would not be redevelopment. That would be desecration of our historic built environment. Please do not pass this plan as it is currently written. Save 126 White Horse Pike. And before somebody suggests that they need this property in order to have parking, let me tell you that if they simply did a smaller building that would fit in better with the character, the massing, and the scale of Haddon Heights and Station Avenue, they would not use an additional lot for parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
In comments,
As the mayor, I will tell you now, we have no intentions of ever letting someone demolish that building. And I'll go on record right now and assure you, no one will demolish that house, at least while I am mayor.
Yeah, but this is in perpetuity, this plan that you're passing. And you don't know what they're gonna do because there's nothing that's defined.
Yes, so to take, will reiterate, to take advantage of the redevelopment plan, the redevelopment plan, they have to sign an agreement with mayor and council, a contract to develop the property and take advantage of this. And my peer on council sitting next to me, Council President Morgan, but I can assure you that I would be 100% against, for the record, demolishing that house.
I'm extremely glad to hear that, but I would like to see that in writing as part of this plan that you're passing. To make sure that it's not just you saying that in perpetuity, somebody is not gonna be able to demolish this historic building under this redevelopment plan.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but whatever redevelopment agreement is signed would stipulate that, and they wouldn't be able to do it, whatever agreement is ultimately signed, if that's in there, that building has to stay.
Yeah.
I believe that lots includes just because of the shared parking. arrangement, correct?
It is, and it is also within the redevelopment area, and discussion was had, at certain meetings that if that property were to be acquired, we made it perfectly clear to the developer that, it would not be part of a demolition plan. It would have to be repurposed, and maintained as it is. It is, they don't own it. This redeveloper that we are negotiating with does not own that property. And so we don't know what the current owner's plans are for that property. If he or someone that he sold it to ever wanted to demolish it, they would have to go through the process with historic preservation. And I find it highly unlikely that they would grant a demolition permit for that, but this plan doesn't allow demolition. And it doesn't encourage demolition of that property.
That's correct, and to your concern, I have spoken with Mr. Gasset, the owner of that property. And I told him that in no uncertain terms, that there is no way that the demolition of that property would ever be allowed in this town. I couldn't see any member of town council, I can't speak for them, but I know them well, and I don't think anyone would consider that. So I don't think there's any realistic possibilities that are happening in the foreseeable future. Obviously, no one can guarantee anything for perpetuity, but I don't see that as even a remote consideration anytime in the future. I hope that addresses your concern.
It is 220,000 square feet, less than a half acre, a little less than a half acre. That's the size of it. Yeah, it's 200 by 100. That's out of 27.
Yeah.
So a little less than a half acre. Rose, you want to come forward and speak?
I came here for 126 Whitehorse Pike also. But you're saying that it's okay to demolish the Carmody building, but you're swearing that you wouldn't demolish 126.
That's not what I said.
No, I said, if there was a way to incentivize the owner of the Carmody building to remove his parking, that would be ideal. I didn't say anything about demolishing the Carmody building, and I think it's a beautiful building as well. So I just want to make sure, I think that was a misunderstanding. All I was saying is, I think we as a borough should try to find a way to get the parking removed from the Whitehorse Pike site. Did not say anything about demolishing them.
What you said was that the parking in front of the building isn't just,
It's not desirable.
At all.
Sorry, I mean, the Preservation Commission has worked with Mike Harmony to try to do more to, there used to be hedges and now there's no hedges. But now, to go back to 126, it's in the same block as 501, 503, 505. Would the setback then be the same? Is it possible that a building could wrap around the Whitehorse Pike and go to 126?
The redevelopment plan, the way that it's written, provides a setback within, let me just get it right here, within 100 feet of Station Avenue, and then there's an additional setback for properties that are more than 100 feet from Station Avenue. So that property would have to maintain the 34-foot.
It steps back once you get 100 feet past the
Because
intersection.
that's one of the things that has marked the White Horse Pike in the whole 60 miles is the setbacks on the White Horse Pike. If you drive down the White Horse Pike in either direction, even our much-loved Audubon, at some point in the 50s and the 60s, they allowed those old houses to build towards the street. The rest of the pike was bastardized by that. I mean, almost any building that you see that's a little old was brought forward to the pike. The old town fathers, who are all dead, would be turning over in their grave at the thought of bringing the building line. And what has it done for Westmont? I mean, I parked at Westmont for, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years. I walked around Dyke Wash, all the years it was in litigation. I would take a 15-minute walk. Does anybody say, oh, let's do what Westmont does? Nobody thinks that's great.
Rose, I don't want you to get
Oh,
off
I
the
know.
rails here, because we're on one.
So, I mean, make sure all your names are on this building so that people know whose decision it was.
Anyone else like to speak?
I'll back up all of
Come on,
That was
Jen.
great. Great passion. Hi, I'm Mary Finley Bouchard. I live at 32 First Avenue and, House and members of the planning board. I just, I went over the redevelopment plan very thorough. You folks did a nice job. But I just have a couple of questions, all right, that I just wanted to address. I was a little surprised when I was making my notes. There was no mention in the plan that we have that Station Avenue and White Horse Pike is on the national, state, and local historic registries. Like, there's no mention of that at all. A historic district, like you mentioned, historic characteristics in district, but I think it's very important for the redevelopment plan that we, if it's going to be, written basically on the ink and signed off, that somewhere we mention the fact that White Horse Pike, Station Avenue, national, state, and local historic register, the designation. I mean, it's just, that's a big deal. It took many months of work from a lot of people, they sacrificed a lot of hours to do that work and to make that happen. And the fact that we have it in Haddon Heights and a lot of other towns don't have it is major. It's a major accomplishment, and it's really something that we should be proud of. I'm glad, by the way, on 126, that you folks answered my prayers on that one. I've been in that building, by the way. I don't know how many of you have been in the building, 126 White Horse Pike. It is stunning. It's an architectural gem. It'll really have an impact on you. I wanted to address on page 11, talking about pilot houses on page 11 of the plan. And it says here, and it's in, you can read it, but it says basically, the pilot houses could extend a maximum of 10 feet above the roof with an additional 5-foot allowance at the elevator hoistway. So, the fact that a building could have a pilot house, and I realized in the last meetings that I was at, that was part of one of the plans. That's quite, it's a tower, basically. And I was wondering if there was any way to address the scale of that. Like that really would have a greater visual impact, especially on a corner property, 501, 503, to have like a 3-story structure that was signed off on, and then a pilot, the pilot house, as part of that. Like, do you see that as a problem? Because that has a very strong visual impact.
Well, so the pilot house is functional only. I mean, it'll be designed nicely, but it's only when the actual site plan is reviewed the board will see how big it is, and it's functional. It's so that you can walk up the steps onto the roof, and there's like a little building enclosure that you walk up the steps and then you exit onto the roof deck. So that's the purpose of it, also for the elevator. So it's only meant to be sized large enough to accommodate people getting up onto the roof deck and then exiting. It also has to be set back at least 15 feet from the edge of the building, and that will help so that when you're on the street and you look up at the roof, you won't see it. Right, so you'll only see 3 stories, you're not gonna see anything more than that. That pilot house has to be set interior to the building footprint.
Now, are we acquiring the property on Station Avenue 505? Are we acquiring that property?
Ms. Finley, I don't want to interrupt, but these are really questions that are very germane to the plan. We're here for a master plan consistency review this evening.
Okay.
We're not here to review the details, the
Okay.
minute details of the plan, quite frankly.
Okay,
So that's what we need to narrow our focus down. Does this in substantial conformance with the goals and objectives of the Haddon Heights master plan and its re-examinations or not? That's all we're here to do this evening. Well, I appreciate your comments, but they're really more geared to the
okay.
actual
Well,
redevelopment.
you know
plan
what? Did I just, parking, and I have to tell you, and really, Joan, thank you for the article, the retrospect, it was very thorough. But, Mr. Morgan, you have mentioned, you had said that when you talked about the parking, the possible parking issues, that it's very congested as it is right now, presently, that area. You were quoting in the retrospect. And looking at the parking situation, where it says here, and it's page 6, parking issues, all required parking for residential uses must be provided on site or in a combination with designated off-site parking spaces on a lot within 500 feet. This is very specific, 500 feet of the property boundary of the residential building. An agreement for use of all street parking spaces must be provided with a site plan application. But also, with regard to parking, we're supposed to have an EV charging
Again,
station.
Ms. Finley, I don't want to interrupt you, but we're talking about details of the plan. We're here to determine the master plan consistency of
Okay.
the redevelopment plan. So if you have a question or comment specific to goals of the Haddon Heights master plan with respect to this redevelopment plan, then I welcome them, but
Okay.
the specific details of the plan aren't
Yeah,
really being
it's just,
discussed this
okay,
evening.
I understand. I guess I'm just
I
frustrated with the
I
parking.
understand your frustration.
Because it is
We
frustrating.
need to stay on our task. Our task here is simply that this evening. It's not to hash out the details.
We're gonna hash out the parking when this comes before us as
Of
an
course.
application, so that'll be vetted.
Yeah, that'll be vetted at the site plan.
Okay.
2 hours on parking.
Oh, I'm sure.
We've spent more hours than I care
Okay.
to remember on parking issues.
Well, you know what, if I could just one last thing, and I'll sit down. And really, you did a great job, I was reading through it, and I'm a retired teacher, and folks really did a nice job. But I just want, we have something outside our doorway going up in the offices, where we pay our taxes. It was from the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia, 2022, June 8, 2022, where we had a commendation as a town, as a borough, for all the work that was done, on the Preservation Education Award, the plan and everything. So we really, as a town, we've set the bar high. We really have. I just hope that we can keep it that way in terms of addressing historic architectural issues. We still need to look like Haddon Heights.
I don't think anyone up here disagrees with that.
Yeah, I mean, we are unique, and you know what, it took a long time to get to this point. Okay, but I thank you for your time, and again, for your, oh, yeah. It was easy to read, very readable. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments from the public? Go forward, Cal. How are you?
Great. How are you? How's everybody doing? It's a little chilly, right? Yeah.
Not ready for it yet.
I'm Carol Barrow. I live at 318 9th Avenue. And I'm wondering, first of all, I understand, I've gone over the whole rehabilitation plan, but I'm wondering, it has always been that whenever a project wants to begin, it comes to HPC first. And now we have changed it around so that HPC comes at the end. And I'm thinking that's maybe where the disconnect is in that, when we look at the plan, because HPC, once everything is already put together, then it comes to us.
Right? It follows the
Yes.
procedure that any site plan in the historic district would have to follow.
Yeah.
Can
So,
I just clarify?
Yeah.
And just to clarify too, we, as Emily had just stated, but the site plan would have to go to HPC for site plan review, just like the ordinance will require. But we
at
also,
what point? At what point? Would you say the middle?
So, no, well,
you-
whenever a site plan it gets filed and it impacts the historic district, my understanding is that it comes to HPC before the board hears it, with a recommendation, a report letter from HPC. And that is the process that's going to be
That's
followed.
how every application has been
Every-
handled since I've been
That's
on board
me
for
too.
12 or 13 years.
That doesn't change by adoption of this redevelopment
No.
plan.
They still have to follow all of that.
and just to clarify too, the developer that we were negotiating with, we directed them to go to HPC long in advance. And to, one, for the demolition permit, but two, to get advice and we could get a recommendation from HPC that then the borough could use in their negotiations with any potential developer. So, and you guys did a phenomenal job writing out recommendations. And then we'll use that in conjunction with your historic item plan that you, the group worked on and received a grant a number of years ago to complete. And we'll use that as part of our negotiating. So for this specific case, we actually encourage them, which they did do, the developer that we're negotiating with now, to go to HPC long in advance. So you were the first stop. for this.
Yes, for that one, but what we saw, it was already a plan. It was already a drawing with the building.
Proposal.
It was already a site plan. It wasn't something.
No.
It was not a site
Site
plan.
plan.
That has not been
I know
submitted
that,
to
it's
anyone.
not the exact one. What I'm saying is the design was there already. And so I just wonder if that's some problem that's going on, because I'm even looking at the master plan. It says prepare a comprehensive list of suggested historic rehabilitation guidelines and strategies for a variety of preservation situations in Haddon Heights. Combine historic preservation goals and objectives with economic development strategies along Station Avenue and in other areas. That's just, like a couple of them. So now I'm wondering that there's the new inclusion, that there's two more pieces of property on Station Avenue. Is that going to make one big building?
Well, I just went on the record and said that we would not permit, I'll say it again, demolition of, it's 126, the current structure, the house sitting there, that is historic.
I'm talking
But that's what
about
I'm saying,
Station
so
Avenue.
no, they would not be able to do one continuous building, and I was gonna say, they would need a variance, because I believe Ms. Bruder spoke to the fact that after 100 feet from Station Ave, the setback would go back to,
Right. Are you asking about the next building down on Station Avenue? So those buildings already share a wall. So in theory, if this redeveloper got a contract on the dentist's office, right, it's a dentist. They could propose, they didn't, and they haven't, but they could propose something that includes that lot if they had it under contract. Those buildings are connected now by a wall, so it wouldn't be outside of what's already anticipated for there to be a 0 side yard setback.
Okay, but if you look at the building at 501, there is a walkway there that
Yes.
takes you to the back where the parking used to be.
Right.
Then the next one would be the florist,
Right.
and, that other building that was there, it was connected. and then there would be an opening. So what would be happening now, if this is all along Station Avenue, so coming from the White Pike or coming down, is one large building, 3-story building, right?
Well, I'll just remind, this redevelopment plan only covers a limited number of lots. So it covers 501 and 503, and then I guess it's 505 and the parking lot. And that's it.
Yeah.
So any further redevelopment proposals on any other lots would be another redevelopment plan, which would consider all these issues again.
Yeah, it just seems to me that it's where, I feel like I need to come to every meeting so that I can find out what's going on, because suddenly, without knowing anything about it, in retrospect, which not many people read, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't read any kind of, physical news to find out something, but that was when I understood that this was going to be almost twice as large as 501 and 503. It went down Station Avenue, a little bit more. So I'm just wondering,
Wasn't it presented as historic?
To you and historic.
I'm sorry?
This was presented.
This is exactly.
Again, we're not talking
Not
about.
505, not
Yes,
505.
but it was, that's correct, not 505.
It doesn't include-
Not 50, whatever, parking lot.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. You were talking about the building on the corner, and now I'm not sure you're talking about a different building. But again, we're here to talk about the plan, not the specific buildings or proposals.
I mean, can I add that from a planning standpoint, you want to look at the big picture. It's preferable to look at the big picture. So you don't really want to look at every single property in isolation, right? Now this redevelopment plan is limited to these several lots because in redevelopment also, there's a lot of existing conditions that you have to deal with. And so it sometimes makes sense to do a discrete plan for properties that have some things in common. But this plan is being developed with an eye to the bigger picture. So while it only applies to these several lots, it was put together with consideration for everything that's going on around it. And any other further redevelopment plans would do the same thing. So I think the inclusion of those additional lots, they're not currently part of what we anticipate to be the proposal for development. But they're included in the plan so that if there is development proposed there, it can be developed in a consistent manner.
I guess I have two other things I just wanted to bring up quickly, that I think that if we're going to have the buildings in the historic districts, then maybe we should encourage these developers to get historic architects, at least that have some idea of what would fit into a historic district. The plan that we first saw of 501 and then 503, the two of them combined, is not a historic looking building. And the developer decided that he would just put in like a little thing this would be on a historic house, right? So if I just put that in there, then that'll do it, right? And that's kind of coming from a different direction and actually having somebody who is very comfortable with historic districts. So the council is looking for people, or I'll say the people are contacting the council, saying, hey, we want to redevelop this particular property somewhere. It just seems like they have carte blanche to design whatever they want without the idea of what would a historic house or building look like in the district. So I guess I'm just asking you to take that into consideration, and I'm going to mention this to council too, but.
I think those comments would be better placed to council where where they're actually working out the details of the redevelopment plan. We can make generic recommendations back, such as look at the parking, look at the setbacks, that kind of thing, but as far as minute details of the design of the site, that's really not our place.
And not to mention, that's gonna be dealt with at site plan
And then
review.
we'll have a bite at that apple when site plan comes in. We're here for
I
master
feel it,
plan
but-
consistency review tonight, I think.
I feel that by the time we would get it, meaning
I encourage you to go, if you have specific comments, you might want to go to a council meeting where these things are being decided.
Well, I was hoping tonight that because we are, I'll say an arm, or we are a function of the planning board, that we would be able to get some ideas about how we as a commission can go ahead, looking at the master plan, looking at what is specifically, supposedly to be the HPC part in all of this. How we can mesh that, how could we make this be better or more understandable? Do you have any suggestions for us?
I mean, I would say that.
I don't understand the question to be honest.
It's a question for council, Mayor.
And then the developer came to the commission, right, and there were like really pertinent recommendations from the committee.
Just the setback, basically. Just that we want to have the setback, but not the actual construction, not the actual look
Okay.
of the building.
Goals and objectives of the master plan, or
Yeah.
historic goals, or many elements to the master plan.
So,
So we're just here to determine whether it substantially meets the goals of the master plan.
right,
So if there's two little things in the master goals that aren't being objective, is this substantially beneficial overall with regard to the master plan? That's what we're trying to determine tonight. We can make recommendations back to council to examine things that we don't necessarily think are the minute things that are, goals of the master plan that we feel might need a better look. But that's all we're doing here.
right, so
We're
Carol,
not
I
here to
mean,
approve anything.
if you look at page 13 and 14 of this plan, that is what we're focused on, is whether this plan conforms with not only the master plan. So you have the Haddon Heights master plan from 1987. You have the master plan reexamination in 2006, and you have the master plan reexamination in 2016. Let me point out some specific, that they're in this, okay? So if you look at the master plan and the other planning documents, which I just cited, as related to the central business district, which you're well aware of, over the last several decades, it's been to promote commercial and mixed-use revitalization. That's part of the master plan and the documents. The master plan and subsequent reexaminations have aimed to enhance the economic vitality of the central business district by improving its physical appearance, introducing new land uses, and maintaining the presence of institutional uses. Again, those are from the documents. Scrolling further down. The master plan reports have encouraged the location of housing within and around the central business district to help support and enliven the business district. And since the adoption of the 1987 plan, the planning emphasis in the borough has been on promoting redevelopment, encourage context-sensitive infill development, and enhancing the streetscape and public areas to create a desirable pedestrian experience. All of the borough's planning efforts over the last several decades have focused on the goal of preserving the borough's physical and environmental amenities while promoting redevelopment and infill that will respond to the evolving needs of residents and businesses. That's directly from Leah's report, and that's directly from our master plan, our reexamination plan, and the master plan, both reexaminations in 2006 and 2016. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Yes, and I looked at that, but you can imagine, I looked at it.
I know you're well aware of
Those two
it.
documents, a lot. And there are many pages, there are many places in those documents that say, be looking out for historic buildings. We want to save them. This is what we are trying to promote. Are we?
Yeah,
are
we do
following
understand that, but that's one element. There are many elements within that master plan, so that's one small, so to say that one element is not 100% complied with, there are many elements that are complied with, so are we substantially complying with the master plan? Or substantially consistent, I should say. So it's sort of, it can be called subjective if you want to call it subjective, but I mean, how do you define substantial? That's what the board's here to decide this evening, really.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we all voiced what our concerns were for council to take a look at when if this does go back to them.
Well, let me ask you this, where do you see the historic district or HPC making a difference?
Yeah, I think they absolutely will.
They're gonna have to
They
go to
absolutely
each-
make a difference. The developer, you know, if this plan gets confirmed, the developer's gonna have to go before your commission again before it comes to site plan. So you're actually absolutely gonna get an opportunity to, you know, voice any recommendations for the look and feel of the building.
Historic preservation is not being bypassed by any
Absolutely
means, and it
not.
hasn't been to this point, they've been there once already.
I want to just demonstrate for you, and can I see that picture in that of the building that you showed, the 501 and 503? The drawing, you just have it right there. There it is. So if this is what comes to us, how are we gonna tell them? The building, you can envision what that looked like, the building, the 501, 502.
Correct, I mean, but with respect to that building, that was in front of HPC, correct? And they voted in favor of a demolition permit, correct? That's correct, right?
Yes,
Okay, so are we revisiting that issue right now?
I guess I'm talking about the
I mean, we shouldn't be
procedure,
revisiting
the
that issue
procedure.
right now.
Okay, but this is what we were presented with when we first came. This is what we were presented with.
We have the same, I have the same, just the plan that was presented to you all.
I know that. The thing is, how could we change this in a meeting that we might have?
You can make
How can we
recommendations, you
say-
can make recommendations back to Borough Council for them to consider, and it's ultimately with a redevelopment plan, it's their jurisdiction whether they're gonna approve it or not.
And you did,
not-
and the HPC made recommendations.
Just like we're gonna make recommendations back, it's up to them whether they wanna accept them or not.
There was a letter
We
addressed
don't
to
make the
HPC,
final determination here.
to mayor and council on recommendations. And there's gonna be another opportunity in site plan review for more recommendations. That's what I'm not getting.
No, there's gonna be more. It's not the
I
end of the
think,
world.
when I think confusion, that was probably just, you know, as a proposal, the developer had to come with a picture of something.
And mayor and council, again, wants the consideration, we want the feedback from HPC. One, so it's, our developers understand that there is a historic guideline to follow. And that it's advantageous for both the developer and the town not to waste time with a project that's gonna be so far out in right field that it would take us an eternity to get back to center. So thus why this developer that we're in agreement with, we encourage them to visit HPC, to review the guidebook, to do everything, and they have done so multiple times, and this is
And the
already.
plan does require that as well, consistent design, consistent with the design guidelines.
It encourages the use of it, yes.
Yeah.
But it specifically said that.
And I was at the HPC meetings, and the first plan that came before HPC during the first meeting changed at the second meeting to reflect what the comments were back, taking other architectural styles from other buildings on Station Avenue. And it might not be to the satisfaction of HPC at the moment, but we haven't seen a final. That hasn't been submitted yet.
Anyone else like to speak?
I'm Brad Stamp, 20 Glover, and I'm a member of the HPC. Just want to check my understanding of the process. If at some point in the future, 505, a developer wanted to demolish that, would that come before HPC for permission?
For a demolition permit?
Yeah.
It happened. It's in the
It's historic,
historic
yeah.
district, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Slade.
It's a good question.
Ms. Lang, come forward.
Kathy Lang, 26 First Avenue. Just have a procedural question on this design. I want to thank you all for your service. I just want to ask if Penn Heights has a redevelopment committee that would be part of your consultation. Like, is there such a thing?
Yeah, so you're referring to like a formal committee where it would report like
Well, what I'm thinking is we're at a pretty crucial point in the history of the town because there's pressure for redevelopment from the county and other entities, even though our Station Avenue 500 block is fully occupied, and I believe the 600 block, I'm not sure, the brick building next door. So we're fully occupied now, but I know you can't stand still. So redevelopment, quote unquote, whether it's buildings or philosophy is important. But I was just wondering, considering that importance, is there an entity that like is more aware of what the trends are in redevelopment and all? Like, you guys are volunteers, you can't possibly know everything. And I just thought, is there anybody here working on redevelopment as far as the town in conjunction with planning? Because planning is the ace in this, you know?
Yeah, so obviously Emily she's representing the borough right now as the redevelopment council. And
All right.
so that's her role. Myself, anybody can reach out to me, people have. Councilwoman Phillips works with me at times. Councilwoman Harron, who just joined us as well, and we've consulted and we speak with, members of council, but professionals who actually have the time, as you were saying, that aren't volunteers, would be Emily Gibbons, who's our attorney, Leah Gruder, who's the planner that we've contracted.
I'm aware of Emily and her expertise, but I'm concerned about the people of the people who vote, like the planning board and council. I was just wondering if there's an economic development committee like you have.
So is there a resident committee? People-
Either a council person or whatever.
So we've recently, for example, Anthony Giorgio, who is a resident in town, who's an architect. He spoke very poignantly at a previous historic meeting, and I was overly impressed by his expertise. And the beautiful thing about using a resident is, I believe Anthony is volunteering his time like us. And so, Haddon Heights is not a rich town. And so we cannot, as much as I would love to go out and be able to hire a ton of professionals, we just can't.
But I was thinking among the council, is there anybody who's tasked with staying up to date? Is there an economic development? The mayor, by yourself?
Councilwoman Phillips.
And Phillips, all right, so will there be minutes eventually on the town website where we could, keep abreast of these?
I could, yeah, there is a section on the town's website. I believe it's under,
It's under redevelopment.
yeah, but
It's on the redevelopment, but
it's
it
the
doesn't
third one
have
down.
committee, it doesn't have minutes or agendas, right?
Well, so
I get that you're not meeting in a room and having tea and discussing these things, that you're calling everybody. But at some point, all the good ideas and the concerns have to be consolidated and formalized so that this board has, a resource.
what you have, and again, because it's an ordinance and it's passed at a public hearing, and you have 6 council members, the mayor doesn't vote unless there's a tie. You have 6 council members, so there are going to be a sharing of ideas. There are going to be opportunities for council members to offer their insight and their thoughts on it, as well as the public. And Council President Morgan, I don't want to speak for him, but takes thorough notes at meetings. He's going to reflect back on not only things that were said in HPC, but things that are in council. The same with the rest of council. And that's the point of serving on council and making decisions about police contracts or engineering for roads. We're constantly taking notes and listening to the concerns. Otherwise, we serve very short terms.
All right, so is that a yes, that there'll be meeting minutes, economic development committee meeting?
To answer your question,
Yes,
directly, there is no formal redevelopment committee, such as there's a finance committee or a Parks and
Right,
Recreation.
that's the point I'm getting at now.
That does not exist. As the mayor explained, he is at the forefront of this issue and he's spearheading it. He is in close consultation with Councilwoman Phillips. I have been intimately involved in this process due to my involvement with HPC and the planning board. As the liaison, the council liaison to the planning board, I communicate any developments in the projects as they come through HPC and planning board to the remaining members of council.
All right, so going forward, under the council minutes, which I understand there's a lag, because they have to be voted on before they're posted, but going forward, there'll be a bracket or a report at the
Occasionally do.
redevelopment.
I want to try to rein this in. We're here for.
All right, I got it. It was just part of this.
I wanted to let you get your thought out. But we're here
Well,
for master
I
plan
think it makes
consistency
sense
reviews.
because some of us or going off topic. It's just a frustration to get information.
I take exception to that because I know that the mayor and council have done everything that we are aware of, possibly make the public aware of every step of the way. I mean, when this was before HPC, we had 2 meetings that went over 2.5 hours each, just on that discrete issue. So we've been incredibly transparent every step of the way. And so anyone complaining of a lack of information either is not attending the meetings or not making any effort to reach out to members of council.
Yes, don't misunderstand me, Chris. I know there's council meetings, HPC meetings, caucuses. I'm just looking, if I'm really interested in what's happening with redevelopment, or this particular plan, is there one place you could go and get all the information from all these things? Either minutes or anything, so not yet, I guess, is the answer.
Up on the right, if you look up at the screen here on the right.
Yes, I got that, I've been on there.
Yeah, if we go to the community section, there's a redevelopment section.
Right,
And plans and there's nothing that requires us to be this transparent, but we put every proposal, not even a formal engineered drawing and plans. These are proposals and ideas. We're trying to engage the community. I said this in the study. This isn't my plan. This is how to make this plan. It's going to outlast me. I'll be longer dead when this is,
I'm gonna think about a better way to express this and I'll get in touch with you. It's not a criticism or anything else. I'm trying to expedite it as Mary citizen, and I'm concerned about this building, or I'm in favor of this building. Is there one place to go to get all the plans? I've been on here, I haven't seen anything yet, but maybe after this meeting, there'll be more specific
But we don't have them.
just on this plan in one spot.
Pardon me? Yes, they're all linked.
In one spot. I know you could go to council and you could go to planning.
This is its own subsection.
St. Mary's most recent proposal.
All right, well, that's everything. Right, that's a general statement. Now, it doesn't have anything particular to this building. Now, when I looked at this, I saw this 25 pages or 21 pages. And the first 3 things talks about redeveloping Station Avenue when we're fully developed, they're not fully occupied. So I've been on that. I
But
looked at it. Thank
Kathy,
you for
but
that.
there was also the report that started this whole process by Pinoni and Associates.
Right,
And that report is public.
right.
And that set forth, that provided the overview. That
This
was
one?
February
All
2002.
right, but don't misunderstand me. It's not a criticism. It's just now that we're in the heat of this going forward, is there one spot to get information?
It's gonna be right there. It's always
All
been
right.
there.
Under there will be a section on
It is there.
501.
It is there. It has been there, I think.
St. Mary's most recent proposal, which is just a proposal, just so it
All right.
is on there now.
They're very good reference.
I encourage you to go look at other towns' websites that are doing redevelopment. I
I'm
guarantee
not.
no one is
worried.
transparent.
All right.
But it's not that.
Douglas Hill, 501 Whitehorse Pike. I have 2 questions. First, with regard to the master plan and this redevelopment, especially for Station Avenue, is there a height restriction?
35 feet, I believe. Or is it 36?
36.
36 feet.
So
Which is
approximately 3
consistent
stories?
with
Just
Consistent with the neighborhood.
And the current zoning.
Consistent with the current zoning, I should say,
Okay.
and many of the buildings around it.
My other question is regard to parking, because the parking, as I read the document that you had online, it looks like it's applied to each specific building coming before zoning and planning. It's not taking into account the density of, say, downtown, meaning for each of the downtown businesses, you're gonna have 1 or 2 cars per business. And I don't know how many existing.
This is really outside of the purview of this meeting.
No, I'm just, my point is that the parking, that the way it's written in the document that you
It
have.
requires 1 space for a 1-bedroom apartment, I believe, 1.5, or for 1 and 2-bedroom apartments, one
side.
space.
You're talking about,
Says-
the commercial part. You're talking about the commercial part. That's what.
Commercial parking.
So that's a commercial.
Oh, it's a commercial part, okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about for the redevelopment of Station Avenue. With regard to parking, the way it's written now, it's on, you're evaluating it based on each building or each plan that comes to planning and zoning for each building.
Mr. Hill, we're here to talk about the
Density.
this specific redevelopment plan.
Yeah, this specific plan does not address the density of the parking,
I think what you're trying to say, maybe I
the
can say.
overall parking.
Yes, I get what you're saying. So you're saying this redevelopment plan is considering, we're looking at the commercial properties that would be developed.
Like 501, 505,
Yeah, storefronts.
this parking,
Has to have these
not,
parking.
not
And
the
then,
whole district.
and then the concern becomes, what you're saying is, let's say down the road, there are already densely packed stores across all along there.
Correct.
So the consideration is, if they add a storefront there, does it add more parking issues?
Right,
Business
how many,
parking.
right, how
That's the
many,
concern.
again, thinking of the big plan, how many, 3-story buildings where you're replacing 1- and 2-story buildings going up and down Station Avenue with increased residential use, which increases parking, which there isn't any.
So to comment, just,
That would be germane.
And that's not
to
addressed,
the actual redevelopment, overall redevelopment.
that's not addressed in the plan that you currently have.
So also that-
It's a one-shot thing.
Officer Family brought up a great point, he's not here tonight, and I will repeat it, it was at the last meeting. He said that everything on Station Ave is 2-hour parking as is now. So, and so number one, a resident couldn't park their car on Station Ave and take up a business space throughout the day for business hours. And that means, that becomes the zoning enforcement, right? So that's the police and zoning officers. Typically, we hire a class 2 to police that. I don't have a class 2 right now because we became a full sworn officer, but they would police that. But commercial, I would tell you now, I don't think we have a parking problem for the downtown, because you can drive it and you always find space. And then I think it's more of an issue where people don't necessarily want to walk from Atlantic Ave, where there's a ton of open parking spaces. That's more of a less, but I don't think we necessarily have a parking problem right now. That would be a good problem to have, right?
Well,
For
I've
business.
never personally had a problem parking down here somewhere if I'm willing to walk a block. but
And I think the businesses
A lot of
would
people don't
welcome
want
it.
to walk a block.
If it was that
That's
big of a
societal
demand to
thing,
be
not-
there, I think most businesses would, and we would have to address it at that point.
Yeah, but I think that should be part of the
There's a
overall plan,
there's a building
that
there.
you're looking at the total number of parking spaces. Again, that plan does not address the density, that's my point. You're not looking at the total number of parking
That would
spaces.
be, I think that would be a problem for the overall redevelopment plan, not this specific,
Not this side over.
not the site overall that we're looking at. There are parking standards in place for this site specifically that council has determined and our redevelopment planner has determined are
Which part-
appropriate,
which
are
part-
typically and customarily
You asked-
appropriate for this use.
All right, you
And
asked
that's
for
the end of
comments. I'm commenting on the section that was available to the public, was parking does not address that.
Parking is addressed in this redevelopment plan that we're considering this evening. That's all I can say.
Right, and I'm saying it doesn't address the total density of the downtown area.
We're not here to we're not here to discuss that this evening.
Chairman, can I just add one thing? There is a section in the redevelopment plan that says that the applicant shall provide an inventory of shared parking opportunities within 1,300 feet, which is generally considered a 5-minute walk. Shared parking may be public spaces and private parking spaces that are available to the public. So what we're asking, and you're right, it doesn't look at the whole downtown, but what we're asking this particular first developer in the door to do is to give us that information. We're basically asking them to do some work for us, to provide us with information about an inventory. Then we'll have that as base information. And as additional redevelopments come in, we'll build on that information. And because I think your point is, you can't have every developer that comes in relying on the same 20 parking spots.
Right.
Of course,
At some
nobody's
point,
saying
it's
that.
not, so that is the point, though. We'll get an inventory, and as we continue with the redevelopment planning process, we'll keep up with it, and hopefully we can then start to build the inventory.
Thanks.
But they were great questions.
Yeah.
They were good questions.
Bill Lang, first of all, just a housekeeping thing. We can't hear you. And if the mics are there, and I assume that's a relatively new technology because we haven't had mics in this town for ages. So if you could all use the mics, please, it would make such a difference. And I think some of the questions that you're getting, Jeff, would not have to be asked
Okay.
because you're covered.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Secondly, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear a lot of things that you were saying in your initial presentation, but I gathered at some point in time that you were comparing the building directly across the street from the one that's, is going to be demolished. Was I wrong in that? No? I'm going to regret this, go ahead.
No, it's a very short answer. No, actually, I didn't compare the building across the street, except for to say, to note that there is parking in front of that building along the White Horse Pike. Whereas in the redevelopment plan, parking won't be permitted in front of the buildings. So we're trying to create a more pedestrian-friendly,
Okay.
desirable streetscape.
All right. Thank you. And just one last thing, this is the history teacher in me, all right? 39 years ago, this room was packed, and I don't exaggerate, most of you are too young to remember, but the line went out the door, all right, and out onto Station Avenue to speak about the demolition of a building right near Kings Highway and the White Horse Pike. This wasn't a political thing, it wasn't Democrat versus Republican, but it's literally split this town. And there were friendships that were lost over it. Eventually, of course, the building was knocked down. But, and the reason I bring it up, Mayor, is because you made the statement, as long as I'm mayor, all right? That exact same statement was made when this was all brought up. And within 2 years, well, they wanted to knock down another one, and then another one, and it was all shot down. And here we are again. So again, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, or at least go to summer school. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lang. And thanks, everybody, for coming out to speak. I know everybody cares deeply about this town, as we all do. Does anybody else want to speak right now? I just don't want to echo too bad. It's that. Okay, we'll close it to the public at this point unless it looks like we're done. We'll bring it back to the board. Given?
If the board has recommendations to make, back to mayor and council, I believe your solicitor has a resolution that she can read, or you are able to adopt that tonight, send it back to mayor and council, and making your recommendations and your determination as to whether or not the plan is presented is consistent with the borough's master plan and is designed to effectuate that master plan.
You've been taking notes, I'm sure.
Yes, I have. I do want to be clear that, or at least ask the question to the board, is that the first recommendation that the board has is that I guess the bike racks be in conformance with what council recommends, and does that sound correct?
Yeah, we have there's a set bike rack that's recently been installed throughout town, and I think we would maintain that consistency. Correct.
Okay. And then, are there any other recommendations that we want to send back?
I would like the setbacks along White Horse Pike re-examined to see if they can be reduced. That was my comment from the last meeting, I believe, so I think that was my more than one comment. Anyone else? Was parking one of them too? I think everybody was happy with the parking.
I think it was more in conjunction with setbacks.
The setback was one.
It was more about comments and give and take.
Yep. Just what could be
A
done.
little bit more clear as to what the recommendation for the setbacks is.
I'd just like to see it get as close, I'd like to see it get as close to what the other buildings are set back along that corner. It's most especially the one across Station there. What's the name of that? What do they call that building? Harmony Building. I'd like, if it's possible, to get as close to what their setback is. Just my personal feeling.
Yeah, go back to the drawing board and see if the architect can come up with a plan that works, doesn't promote parking in front.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the way Dean articulates that,
I've worked with a lot of great architects, and they're very creative, so I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Thanks, Steve. You're a lot more articulate than I am, as usual.
Anything else, any other comments?
Okay, here or none, I think we can entertain a motion to determine this to be substantially in conformance with the methods, what we call substantial conformance with the master plan, substantial consistency with the master plan, I'm sorry, I was looking for the word. If anyone wants to make that motion with the conditions we just talked about, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the redevelopment plan as submitted by Ms. Bruder and as discussed, subject to the conditions that we just put in the resolution or the proposed resolution. Is that sufficient?
The conditions we just talked about.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Roll call, Suzanne?
Sure. Mayor Halk,
Yes.
Councilman Morgan,
Abstain.
Mr. Madden,
Yes.
Ms. Bonaccorsi,
Yes.
Mr. Dukakis.
Yes.
Chairman Hansen,
Yes.
Mr. Shannon,
Yes.
and Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
The ayes have it. I don't believe does anybody have any other concerns or comments for this evening? Not, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion for adjournment. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks for coming out, everyone.
Nah.